What's up everybody, Ragnarok here, and welcome to Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. Now, I know it's been a while since I've actually created a video, and it's mostly been because of Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. I kind of wanted the shininess to kind of dim down a little bit. Not that it's not great, but just in general, just kind of dim down to where everyone's kind of forcing content out fast, or getting content out just because it's there. I kind of wanted to gather fully my thoughts and my feelings on not just the story, but a few of the jobs that I've been able to get to 80. I gotten 3 jobs so far at 80, and to be honest, before we jump in, there are going to be some spoilers for the main story quest. Some characters I'm going to mention, places I'm going to mention as well. And with that, of course, we'll jump right on in. And to be honest, the best Final Fantasy XIV expansion and potentially the best Final Fantasy story that's been ever told, in my personal opinion. Now, people can have their opinions. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have a favorite Final Fantasy story, let me know in the comments. I've definitely played a few of them and in the process of finishing some of the others, and cannot wait for the Final Fantasy VIII remaster, because I will definitely be playing that. But I would like to hear people's thoughts in the comments of their favorite Final Fantasy story. But what makes this special? Well, this is where the spoiler is going to be. So I recommend that if you do not want any spoilers, go ahead and exit the video, come back when you've finished. We can talk about it as well in the comments. Or if you don't care about spoilers. So with that out of the way, jumping right on in, if you stayed, like I said, spoilers. If you do not care, so be it. So, why do I love the story? The story is so well done. The characters such as Emmett Selk, Valkyrie, and the growth of Urianger, Thancred, and Y'shtola, Alphinaud, and Alisaie as a collective. All their growth. The character Minfilia, who ends up becoming Reen by the end of it, when she becomes her own person, which is really nice. We learn that Minfilia is not just a person, it's also generations of Minfilias, who, as we know now, is called the Oracle of Light. So with that, the new Minfilia that we see, that Thancred is kind of being a father figure for, turns into Reen after she becomes her own and embraces her powers and everything like that. Which is great. That's a phenomenal storytelling and growth throughout the whole entire story. You love a lot of characters, even the villains. Valkyrie is a character you love to hate. He is a character that is despicable, disgusting, and absolutely vile to the very core. And Emmett Selk, who, even though he is a sick, demented person mentally, you end up feeling for him, his people, what he goes through, the reason behind the Ascians. Why are they doing what they're doing? There are so many people, that think, Emmett Selk and the Ascians, you really didn't see much of them in Stormblood. And that is true. Our main antagonist was ultimately Xenos and the Garlean Empire and, liberation and stuff like that. It was more towards personal, even though throughout Heaven's Ward and Realm Reborn, the main focus was Ascians as a whole. And they drifted away a little bit. They kind of got back on board with it closer to the end of Stormblood, where the Ascians were becoming a little bit more prevalent, where they were actually the ones, where we find out they were the ones that created the Garlean Empire. They were the ones that kind of were behind a lot of the little tiny things that end up becoming big. They played massive roles, and their main agenda, if you're not aware, is to pretty much cause an event called the Rejoining, which all of the shards that are connected to the source, which is where we helm from, come together as one and bring back Zodiark, who is the counter to, or the other half of Hydaelyn, who is the light, as who we've been fighting for. Hydaelyn's champion. Her opposite is Zodiark, who's the dark, the darkness. And, to combat him was to split him into 13 and create 13 different crystals and 13 different realms and things like that, where history and things have changed and everything. Now, we've come to find out that the umbral calamities that we have been seeing throughout our whole history of Final Fantasy XIV, of what's been told of each umbral calamity, hence it be the elements, more or less, of fire, ice, wind, and things like that, and earth. In general, they were actually rejoined. We come to find out that each crystal that every time that we had an umbral calamity, it was because one of the other crystals or the other realities merged with the source. It ended up becoming overflowed to the point where it caused a catastrophic event. So now we learn that that's what the Ascians want. They want it all to come to full rejoining, to bring back pretty much their god that they wanted. Now, the reason why I say god, like bring back their god, what it sounds like primal work. So as a matter of fact, we learn in Shadowbringers that Zodiark and Hydaelyn both are the very first primals to come into existence. Now, of course, it blows our minds because we've been playing this game for 6 years now. Now, it makes sense, but at the same time, we're just like, whoa. The things that we've been fighting for all this time. Primals from A Realm Reborn, some primals in Heaven's Ward, I believe, and, we haven't really fought primals until in Shadowbringers we fought Tsukuyomi, which is considered a primal, in Susanoo. The other ones really weren't. If I'm remembering correctly, those were the only two technical primals that were coming into existence. So we still fight them, and that's our main objective, but the main thing is that our people, or who we fight for, Hydaelyn, is a primal and at the very core. And Zodiark was also a primal. As a matter of fact, Zodiark was the first primal, as we come to find out. Later on in the story, Emmett Selk says the Ascians brought Zodiark to life because they were going through something like catastrophic. Probably their version of an umbral calamity. And what they did was they had to pray and sacrifice to bring Zodiark to life. Bringing Zodiark to life ended up saving them. However, there were people who objected against bringing not only Zodiark, but what it took to bring Zodiark to life. And with doing such, of course, the Ascians, again, the other people who objected towards it, made Hydaelyn to battle Zodiark, who Hydaelyn did end up winning. And the way she caged him was splitting from the source, splitting into 13 different, other than the source, 13 other crystals that Zodiark is also a part of. The only way to break that is to bring all of these shattered pieces together as one. That is what the Ascians want at the end of the day. So you learn about this, and the reason why the remaining Ascians want that is because they want to bring back their people, the people who they've lost, who they've sacrificed. It's really heartbreaking, honestly. That's why you end up feeling for Emmett Selk, his purpose, his reason for doing what he does, but also what the Ascians do. Now, we also learn that the titles that we've been giving him, Emmett Selk and La Habrea, they're actually not their names. They're actually just their titles of their stance. Of the status quo, you may say, of their within the ASEAN community. So we learn later Emmett Selk is his real name is Hades. It was beautiful. It was honestly great. And to have an antagonist like that you truly feel sorry for and you feel for at the end, even though you have to kill him because he's not going to stop. It's still one of those things where you're like, wow, like this is overwhelmingly phenomenal to me. And I couldn't have agreed more. Like, it's great, absolutely great of how they really did this story. Now, in essence, our purpose there is to bring back night. It's constantly light out. How do we do that? We fight the world's enemies, which is the Sin Eaters. And they get transformed from other beings, other creatures and humans alike. And, or the other races alike. And they get transformed to these monstrosities and things like that. But when they do that, they become mindless husks, pretty much. They just fight and kill without really having a meaning for it. But what we have to do to bring back night to these places, to the whole first, at least in our area for Novarant, is to kill Light Wardens. Now, what are Light Wardens? Light Wardens are pretty much the generals of Sin Eaters. Now, they're generals of their particular area. Once you kill a Light Warden, night will come back. However, there is a catch, and it becomes a big story point too. When you kill a Light Warden, their light doesn't just dissipate like a normal Sin Eater. As a matter of fact, it is impossible by standard to kill a Light Warden because the light within the Warden itself will just move to another host and transform that host into another Light Warden. So it goes into a rigorous cycle to make it pretty much unstoppable. However, we come into the first and we fight the first Light Warden. Now, the Exarch himself actually had this idea that we could do it. Why? Because we are the champion, the warrior of light. So, what do? Naturally, we kill the Light Warden. We take the light. At first, it seems like we dissipate it, where we completely, get rid of it and destroy it. However, it does something else. For us, we don't get corrupted by it. But we end up absorbing it. Now, within the story, and within the story confines, you end up fighting about five Light Wardens. One for Lakeland, one for Amarang, one for Raktika. Sorry, I'm trying to think of the other zones as well, because each zone always has a Light Warden, and we end up having to destroy and kill the Light Warden to bring night back. So Lakeland, Amarang, Ilmeg, Calusia, Raktika. Now, the sixth zone, the Tempest, which is the final zone, does not have Light Warden, but we do have to fight. That's where we end up fighting Hades, or Emmett Selk. So, that's what is kind of required there. And by the end of it, we end up learning that the light, though it gets absorbed and it brings back night, and we're not turning into a Light Warden, it is corrupting us, corrupting our light, to the point where if we absorb any more, we end up pretty much turning into a Light Warden, a complete abomination Sin Eater. And that becomes a big story point, and it's really terrifying all at once because it comes up often closer to the end, and we expend it all. because throughout the story we get Arbert, who was the Warrior of Darkness, and we learn about him and his group, and we learn about them, the Warriors of Darkness that we've grown to know as them. They not only have names, but they were heroes. They were champions. And that is what is important there. They were champions. And by far, it was so well done. So well done. So overall, by the end of it, you end up really feeling for Emmett Selk. You end up feeling completely distraught a lot of the time. Like, the feels throughout this whole entire expansion have been getting hit back to back to back. I'm not even going to go into the small nitty gritty stuff, like the smallest pieces of story that truly make you feel too. Not even just the big picture, but the small pictures too. Just overall, it's worth the play, hands down. Now, to jump into the other half, the jobs. I mean, there's job changes all around, and 2 new jobs, technically 3 if you count the rework. And those are the 3 I played, and got them up to 80 and everything. So I went through the story as a Gunbreaker. I leveled Gunbreaker from 60 to 80, 60 to 70, went through the story from 70 to 80, and then went back to the Dancer, and then leveled Machinist, and so on and so forth. I've been able to do all 3 of them in higher end content, such as the Extreme Trials, even the new raids, the new raid tier that they had, the first raid tier I should probably say, for the 8-man for Eden, normal at least, so we're not in the Savage yet. But going into that, of course, the designs that they've created for these new, not only the new jobs, but even Machinist, and going through even leveling some of the other jobs like Bard, Monk, Scholar, Black Mage, and Summoner, they, just as an overall concept to them, it is great. To be perfectly honest, it's absolutely great. If I had to pick one to kind of focus on, I would probably say it's the ranged physical role as a whole. Like, I love Machinist and Dancer. I'm leveling Bard. Now, normally I was Bard mained all the way up until recent. And I really don't know why, but as a whole, it's refreshing to be able to play a whole nother job and be able to play it in those high ends and still feel damn good. They really outdid themselves here. Now, of course, those are from my personal experience. Some people may have a completely different experience, and that's perfectly fine, normal as a whole. But keep in mind that, when it comes to a new expansion and it has new jobs and things like that, this actually came with 2 new races. Granted, they're gender locked, but we come with 2 new races. We have the Hrothgar and we have the Viera. The Hrothgar are a little bit more of the beast characters. They're more lion-like and stuff of that nature. Viera are the bunny girls. There is nothing better than seeing them. They're really cool and great designed. But when it comes to the jobs, I couldn't be happier. Like, Machinist rework, absolutely stunning. Like, it feels good to play. Like, really good to play. It doesn't feel too crazy because it feels a little bit more lax. Now, Dancer is absolutely fun. Like, now, I played Bard from the very beginning through Heaven's Ward, from Realm Reborn to Heaven's Ward to Stormblood. I'm used to living off procs and living off of that stuff. Some people may not. If you're not, then the Bard or the Dancer may not be your go-to there, and may not have the most fun. But people who are okay with being able to play a job that you don't know what you're going to get every time, you're going to have a blast, because it is proc-based. You have to adjust to the situation at hand with every encounter, and quite frankly, it's heart pumping. playing in the higher end for Extreme Trials, for Titania and Innocence, they both are. They have their own challenges, but as a whole, when you're playing Dancer, phenomenal movement. No, that's one of going to be the biggest things there. It's going to be phenomenal movement. And now, playing into the raid, Eden, it feels damn good to play a ranged physical now. Like, I don't feel like I'm being crappy as a machinist when I have to shove everything in a small window. Granted, you still have that heart pumping moments. Thanks to a friend of mine who was in my FC, they were able to help me with a rotation, an opener, I would probably say, for the machinist. And of course, sitting there, you end up theory crafting a lot. And with doing that, of course, I theory craft, and I came up with one, and it did fairly well, because you still have to incorporate wildfire into your rotation there. And I had one that was fairly good. I would do averaging at least at max level gear, at least for now. I'm only missing one ring for 450, but I was averaging about 32,000 to 36,000 on wildfire. However, with the new rotation and opener I have for the machinist, I'm averaging 42 to 47,000. And it's just small changes that make a quality of life, that use your full kit. And that is going to be the biggest thing about these jobs. Some people say, oh, it's too simple. There's going to be jobs that, oh, they're too simple. And that's going to be ranged physical. Ranged physical has gotten really simple, but there's a fine line between being too simple and being streamlined. And to me, every single one of these ranged physicals are streamlined. They're not too simple. They are streamlined to their role, and they're streamlined to their character. Each job is very unique. You cannot go from, like, it takes a quick moment to kind of get your head around the fact that I'm moving from dancer to machinist. I've bounced back and forth many times when it comes to Party Finder. Like, after I'll do a few runs with a group as a dancer, and I'm comfortable and I get it and everything of that nature, and then after that party I switch to machinist, go to another party, and I'm playing through that, and I'm just like, whew, it takes a quick second to kind of get myself in that mode again, to kind of shift jobs. But the thing is, now it feels good. Like, I didn't have a go-to. Like, I always went to, Bard, for Stormblood. I always went to Bard. I had machinist, but I focused on Bard. I knew Bard most. And now, I still have to level Bard, and I still love Bard. I just need to get adjusted to Bard as a whole now. Because Bard's different. Slightly different, but different still, nevertheless. Some of the other abilities in which I used to have no longer exist. So, right now, I'm focusing on machinist. Like I said, I started my very first DPS job was dancer, so I'm very comfortable with dancer, and I love dancer. I'll be coming out with a video either this week or next week for dancer guide or comparisons for that between the ranged physicals, because that's the role I'll be maining, and of course gonna be leveling other jobs like monk and scholar and in turn summoner. Since they share. But as a whole, giving my full thought review of Shadowbringers. In all honesty, this is the greatest expansion I've ever played. And that comes with a quick PSA that I played World of Warcraft for years. And when I first started, I think it was at closer to the end of it was at the end of, what was it called? The Burning Crusade. And we were just getting into the Wrath of the Lich King. And I played through Wrath of the Lich King, which at the time was my favorite. It was my favorite expansion. It had so much lore, deep lore, great storytelling. Everything was in line to make this the best, and I truly mean the best expansion of any MMO of all time. Now, of course, going from there, World of Warcraft has slowed down quite a bit, and Final Fantasy XIV has now picked up more as the years came on. And I got involved after, I think at the end of year 1 of Heavensward, I plowed through, Realm Reborn, got fully maxed out on Bard for Heavensward, and I played Stormblood for the first 6 months, and then I stopped. I would come back and forth every now and again just for other games, and I was always falling off. And it was mostly like the story. The story itself was decent. I didn't hate it, but I did not love it. You know what I mean? So it's something that I wish was better about it. But now, coming to Shadowbringers and playing through the whole entire story, in all honesty, there's no doubt in my mind, this is truly the greatest expansion in any MMO can ever do. Can they top it? Possibly. It is possible that the only people who can top it is Square Enix themselves. This is the peak of their storytelling here, and it's not going to end here. That's one of the biggest things. Even after, we still got 2 years of what they're planning on doing with Shadowbringers. That is true. However, this is not the final expansion. If we look all the way back of when Yoshida-san did say he is saying at a minimum of 10 years of this game. That makes about a year and a half, almost 2 years for Realm Reborn before Heavensward came out. 2 years after that, we have Stormblood. 2 years after that, we have Shadowbringers. 3 expansions, 6 years of this game. That by itself, we're in 6 years. 2 years, it's going to make it an 8-year game. That's another expansion. It's more or less where their timing is. It's every about 2 years they make another expansion or release another one. Okay? And then we have, pretty much, in my theory, we have 2 more expansions. The story can only go in the direction that they end this on. The way they end Shadowbringers is going to be important and a good segue to where it's going to end. Because this is the midway point. In all honesty, this is the midway point where we're reaching the peak of their story. And now, because this is the climax, the way I'm seeing it is that this expansion is the climax of the full story that Yoshida-san wishes to say or wishes to tell throughout the life of Final Fantasy XIV. What's going to happen after the 10th year? Well, what's going to happen after the last expansion? We have zero clue. Hell, even after the 10 years after that next expansion, who knows if that's really truly the end? We don't really know. Even now, they are still supporting Final Fantasy XI. After all these years, they're still supporting it. I'm not sure about content-wise. I've never played Final Fantasy XI. I hear from plenty of other people who have played Final Fantasy XI or still are playing Final Fantasy XI. But even if that is the case, we truly do not know how long the support is going to be. We don't know how long the story is. For all we know, at the 10th year, when the last expansion comes out, that expansion comes out, that could very well be the last expansion, but not the last pieces of content. Like, they add little bits here and there. Nothing adding to the story, but things that are adding to the game as a whole. At that point, you kind of work that out. Because we also got to look at it in this perspective. Our level cap's at level 80. Now, World of Warcraft has extended. I think right now they're at 120. I think they're at max item level of at max level of 120. The next expansion is going to have a reset to it. We all know it. So the next expansion, what I mean by reset is they're going to reset the numbers for HP and, you know, possibly damage output and things of that nature. The reason why is because the numbers and calculations are getting far too high. Like, for instance, even Dancer, they're hitting 100k sometimes on crits. Like, that's not really normal. The only other job that can necessarily hit that is going to be Black Mage, technically. But they can't keep that going because the numbers are getting too high. They even said it, they're going to most likely do a reset. I believe they did that for Heaven's Ward. I think they were getting to that point in Heaven's Ward and they reset it. And then they kind of built on from there to get to the point of where they're at now for when they were at Stormblood. And of course now Shadowbringers feeds off of what Stormblood ended on. So it's just going to keep growing, I would probably say. Which is alright to me. I don't mind. But just so we are aware. So that is pretty much my thoughts. And like I said, I'll probably come out with a video soon. Another video, I'd probably say next week. I'm going to try and finish leveling Bard. And once I get Bard up to level and I start messing around with it, I'll start making some comparison and potential guides for each one of them. Just as my own personal view on the job and how I've found my way to kind of play with it. So I appreciate you guys staying around, hearing my little rant and my thoughts. I appreciate the patience as well. Like I said, I just wanted to not overload people with, you know, Final Fantasy XIV content with everyone else. People already have guides out for the dungeons and the extreme trials and things of that nature, which by all means, like, I truly love those guys. They're really, really awesome. You know, people like Mr. Happy and Miss Deck. They're phenomenal guide makers. And maybe one day I'll be jumping in onto that boat as well and hopefully be one of them. But until then, of course, I will be putting out content here and there, feeling a little bit more comfortable as time goes on with the game. Keep a lookout for Let's Plays on here as well. I plan on doing a series of Mass Effect videos, my favorite franchise of all time. So I definitely will probably be doing a Let's Play through here. And with that, I appreciate you all, and I do hope to see you all in the next one. Peace.